Let's now turn to the Middle East, where Israel is set to hold a fifth general election after its fractured coalition government concluded it could not survive. In a major political development, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett will switch places with Yair Lapid under an existing deal. The announcement made on Monday comes after weeks of speculation that the coalition was on the brink of collapse. We have more in this report.
The leaders of Israel's governing coalition have said that they will submit a bill next week to dissolve parliament, a legislature that would force new elections if approved. This move comes a year after the ideologically desperate government came into being and brings closer to a reality a fifth election in less than 4 years with no guarantee of a viable new administration. The two leading coalition partners, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett and Foreign Minister Yair Lapid, made known in a statement that after exhausting all efforts to stabilize the coalition, they have decided to submit a bill dissolving parliament.
In the passing few weeks, we did everything within our power to preserve this government, which we believe its existence is a national interest. Trust me, we left no stone unturned. We didn't do it for our own honor, but for the people. Last Friday, I had several talks with law and order personnel, and we came to the conclusion that in 10 days, after the settlements bylaws become revoked, Israel will face security damages and legislative chaos. I couldn't allow it. We did everything to get all the votes, but unfortunately, we failed in our attempt. My friend, Lapid, and myself decided to dissolve this government and set a date for the next elections while promising an orderly transfer of power and while making sure Israel is secured during the shift. The country carries on.
The bill will be submitted next week, and if it is approved, Lapid will take over as premier of a caretaker government, they added. Meanwhile, it will be Yair Lapid who would host US President Joe Biden during his scheduled visit to Israel next month. The vote, expected this autumn, could bring about a return of nationalist religious government led by the former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, or another prolonged period of political gridlock. The weakened coalition government, which includes parties from across the political spectrum, lost its majority earlier this year and has faced rebellions from different lawmakers in recent weeks. Foreign Minister Yair Lapid will take over from Mr. Bennett on an interim basis in agreements that they announced together.
And Global Affairs analyst Calvin Dack joins me to discuss this. He joins me from Washington, D.C. via Skype. Good to have you join us.
Good to be here.
So when it comes to this latest development in Israel, when you look at how they struggle to put a coalition together and how the coalition itself has declined from 62 members to 59 members, are you surprised by this latest development?
Not really. I think I'm surprised in that it happened this quickly, but I think the kind of lesson that this reminds us, not only in Israel, but everywhere, and including here in the United States, is that when disparate parties from across the spectrum unite around one thing, and that being that, we're not the other guy, we're not Netanyahu, that can really inspire voters and, can give them the winning coalition that they had, but that can't be all. Because at some point, this coalition that coalesced together against Netanyahu has to show that it can govern and, have a vision for Israel that the voters wanted. And they clearly did the first part, but not the second part. So in that sense, it's not that surprising.
And it's interesting you mentioned the former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So while this is a gamble for the Likud party to see if it can get majority in parliament, there's also a gamble that could become an opportunity for Netanyahu. And I just wanted to speak to that.
Yes. And, let me tell you, if we look at what's happening with Netanyahu and our former President Trump, there's so many parallels that kind of helped me understand this. One, you've got a leader that was ousted in both cases because leaders of the opposition and even of the leader's own party decided to come together to oust them. So they were all united by not agreeing with the person in power. That applies for Trump and Netanyahu. You've got Netanyahu is, currently dealing with his own criminal trial troubles. Donald Trump, same way. That's going to be coming soon later this year. You've also got both of them who have bases that never lost their support, despite the fact that they lost. And probably the biggest is that when, if the Knesset is dissolved, as we're expecting, and the elections are held in October, this could be an opening for Netanyahu to come back in power, which is the same song that Donald Trump is singing for 2024. So I think that this, besides being just a short coalition, just over a year, this is also signaling the possible rise of Netanyahu again in Israeli politics.
The big question is whether this election, that there's now a call for election, I think it's September, October. But the big question is whether this election can actually bring stability when you look at how elections have gone previously, government struggling to form a majority in parliament.
That's the good question, because, before the most recent election, that was something that Netanyahu struggled with himself. And this new coalition of, diverse views and parties said that they were the ones that would be able to do it, and they couldn't. So who will be able to do it? Now, one thing, regardless whether you agree with Netanyahu or not, he is very politically savvy. I think that he understands, and what he'll probably do is change the vision that he has for Israel enough so that he gets a bigger, stronger coalition to finally be able to get out of this trap of, the fifth election in 3.5 years.
We'll see how that plays out. Thank you so much for talking to us, Global Affairs analyst Calvin Dack.
Thank you.